My name is Layla Maradi. I'm 27 years old, born and raised in Tehran, the capital city of Iran. You've probably never heard of me before, but if you are watching this video, it's because something extraordinary happened to me. Something that has the power to change the way you see life, death, and the fate of our entire world. I'm not a celebrity. I'm not a preacher, nor did I ever crave attention. I am just an ordinary woman, a daughter, a sister, and a volunteer working with an NGO for peace amidst the chaos of war. My life was dedicated to helping those scarred by conflict in the Middle East, until the day my own life was ripped away from me in a single violent instant. What happened to me can't be explained with simple words. It wasn't just an accident or a fainting spell. I actually died. My heart stopped. My body lay motionless among the rubble. And for a brief, unimaginable moment, I left behind everything I thought I knew about reality. Before I take you any further into my story, I want to ask you something from my heart. If you believe in the power of hope, if you are searching for answers, or if you've ever wondered about what comes after death, please like this video and share your thoughts in the comments below. Your story and your voice matter more than you know. What I'm about to share is not just my experience, it's a message, a warning, and above all, a call for awakening. So please, watch until the end. It may save your life, or even your soul. Before my story became a warning to the world, I was just Layla, someone you might walk past on the busy streets of Tehran without ever noticing. I grew up in a modest apartment in the northern part of the city, the daughter of a school teacher and a nurse. My parents, both hardworking and full of compassion, taught me the value of education, kindness, and serving others from a young age. I was never one to chase after luxury or power. My dreams were simple: to bring a little more peace and understanding into a world torn apart by conflict. After graduating from university with a degree in social work, I joined an international NGO focused on helping refugees and children affected by the wars raging around our borders. My days were spent in shelters, hospitals, and devastated neighborhoods, offering what little hope I could to those who had lost everything. But there's something else you should know. I never considered myself deeply religious. In fact, I often questioned God, especially when confronted by so much pain and injustice. I respected all faiths, but I kept my beliefs private, hidden even from my closest friends. Looking back, I realize now that my lack of certainty was part of my journey. Perhaps deep down, I was searching for meaning, something to anchor my soul in the midst of chaos. I never imagined that the answer would come in such a dramatic, life-altering way. I never expected that I would be chosen to see what I saw, to return with a message that would shake me to my core. But everything changed on that one terrible day, when my life ended, and a new, unimaginable journey began. The accident that ended her life. It was an ordinary morning in Tehran, a city that never really sleeps, where the buzz of scooters mixes with the distant hum of prayer calls and the laughter of children playing in the alleys. I remember feeling strangely hopeful that day. There was a sense of peace in the air, even though the world around us felt fragile, as if it could break at any moment. I was on my way to a refugee shelter on the outskirts of the city, carrying boxes of supplies with a few friends from my NGO. We talked about ordinary things: family, work, dreams for a better future. There was no warning, no siren, just a sudden, blinding flash that turned everything to chaos. The ground shook violently, windows shattered. I felt the force of the explosion throw me backward, slamming me against a concrete wall. There was screaming, then silence. Dust filled my lungs as I tried to call out for help, but my voice was swallowed by the rubble. In that instant, all the noise and confusion faded away. My thoughts slowed. I felt my body growing heavier, as if I were sinking beneath deep water. My last memory before everything went black was the face of a small boy I had helped earlier that week, his wide eyes filled with hope. Then, nothing. No pain, no fear, just the quiet realization that I was no longer among the living, the sensation of leaving the body. They say that when you die, your whole life flashes before your eyes, but for me it was different. There was no montage of memories, no rush of regrets or unfinished dreams. Instead, there was only stillness, a perfect, impossible silence that wrapped around me like a warm blanket. At first I thought I was dreaming. I could see my body lying twisted among the ruins, motionless, covered in gray dust. People were running, shouting, trying to pull survivors from the wreckage. I watched as if from a distance, detached from everything I had ever known. There was no pain, no panic, only peace. I felt myself rising, gently floating above the chaos as if carried by invisible arms. The further I drifted, the less I worried about the world below. My fear dissolved into a sense of acceptance and then a profound, overwhelming sense of love. It was like nothing I had ever experienced. Pure, unconditional, and so powerful that it brought me to tears. It was in that moment, suspended between worlds, that I realized I wasn't alone. There was a presence with me, calm, reassuring, and impossibly bright. I couldn't see a face, but I felt its warmth, its light, reaching out to me. It was as if every hurt, every sorrow, every burden I'd ever carried had been lifted. Time seemed to lose all meaning. I saw colors more vivid than anything on earth and heard a music that wasn't made of notes, but of pure feeling, joy, compassion, forgiveness. I understood without words that I had left behind the world I knew, and yet I had never felt more alive. The appearance of Jesus. Amidst the destruction, as I floated higher, the scene below began to fade. The screams, the shattered buildings, the dust, all of it dissolved into a brilliant white light. The light was alive, pulsing, more real than anything I had ever known. I felt as if I was being pulled into the heart of the universe itself, where everything was made of love and purpose. Then, through the shimmering brightness, I saw him. At first, I couldn't comprehend what I was seeing. There was no halo, no thundering voice. Instead, he stood in the middle of that endless light, calm, steady, his presence radiating an indescribable power. I knew instantly, without a doubt, that this was Jesus. But he wasn't distant or unreachable. He was close, present, and heartbreakingly gentle. His eyes, those eyes, were unlike anything I could describe. They were filled with an unfathomable sorrow for the pain of the world, yet also with hope, mercy, and a fierce, protective love. When he looked at me, I felt as though every part of me was known, every secret exposed, every failure forgiven. His gaze was like a warm embrace in the coldest night, both humbling and comforting. He didn't speak at first. Instead, he simply reached out his hand. In that gesture, I felt a wave of memories and emotions. My doubts, my questions, my hunger for meaning, all answered in an instant. I knew I was safe. I knew I was loved. Around him, the light grew even brighter, and in it, I began to see glimpses of places and people from every corner of the world. Some were weeping, others were praying, some lost in despair, and some reaching toward the light with hope. It was as if, through Jesus, all the suffering and longing of humanity were drawn together, seen, understood, and held in his boundless heart. And then, in the center of that radiant peace, Jesus finally spoke. His words echoed not only in my ears, but in my soul. Layla, there is something you must see. The vision of cities destroyed by fire. As soon as Jesus spoke, the light around us shifted. I felt myself being drawn into another place, somewhere that was not heaven, not earth, but a space between. In an instant, visions began to flood my mind, so vivid and intense that they left me trembling. I saw cities I recognized, their skylines etched against the horizon: New York, Paris, London, Moscow, and my own beloved Tehran. Each one was shrouded in darkness, broken only by flashes of blinding light and the roar of distant thunder. It was not a storm. It was something far more terrible. Suddenly, enormous fireballs erupted from the earth, consuming entire neighborhoods in an instant. Buildings crumbled, bridges fell, and the air was filled with smoke and ash. I saw people running, searching for shelter, desperate and afraid. Their cries echoed in my spirit, a chorus of fear and confusion that pierced deeper than any physical pain. The fire was merciless. It devoured everything: homes, monuments, even the memories of generations. I felt the hopelessness of those who survived, the emptiness left behind by so much loss. But there was something even more chilling. Amidst the chaos, I saw leaders gathered around tables, their faces hidden in shadow. They pressed buttons and spoke in cold, calculated voices. I understood without being told that these fires were not natural disasters. They were acts of war, nuclear war, the kind of destruction no one could truly imagine until it was too late. All around the world, the same pattern repeated. Cities burned, families were torn apart, and as the flames raged higher, I sensed a darkness spreading, not just physical, but spiritual. Despair and hatred grew like poison, threatening to extinguish what little hope remained. Through it all, Jesus stood beside me, his face sorrowful but resolute. He let me see everything: the agony, the terror, the consequences of choices made in secret. And then, he turned to me and said, "This is not the end, Layla, but you must understand what is coming." The revelation of the imminent nuclear conflict. Standing beside Jesus, I felt the weight of every soul suffering in those burning cities. My heart ached with a sorrow so deep it was almost unbearable. The images of destruction swirled around us, and yet, I sensed that what I was seeing was more than a warning. It was a plea for understanding, a call to awaken before it was too late. Jesus turned to me, his eyes reflecting the flames of devastation and the hope that still flickered in the midst of chaos. His voice was gentle, but filled with urgency. "Layla, the world stands on the edge of a great trial," he said. "There are forces at work, powers and principalities, driving nations toward the brink of annihilation. This conflict is not only about politics or borders. It is a war for the soul of humanity." As he spoke, I saw visions of world leaders making decisions in secret, blinded by pride and fear. I saw scientists building weapons more powerful than anyone could imagine, convinced they were only creating tools of deterrence, not destruction. I saw ordinary people caught in the crossfire. Parents, children, strangers, all longing for peace but powerless to stop what was unfolding. Jesus continued, "There is still time to turn away from this path, but the window is closing. My children must wake up. They must pray, seek the truth, and stand together against hatred, lies, and division." He showed me families kneeling together, praying for protection and wisdom. I saw small acts of kindness, a stranger offering shelter, an enemy forgiving another, a child giving away their last piece of bread. In those moments, the darkness was pushed back, and the fires of war were held at bay, if only for a moment. But the warnings were clear. Unless the hearts of humanity changed, unless people chose love over fear and truth over deception, the nightmare I witnessed would become reality. Jesus looked into my soul. "You must tell them, Layla. Do not let fear silence you. Share what you have seen, for hope still lives in those who believe." The role of world leaders and global manipulation. The visions shifted once again. I saw the faces of world leaders, some I recognized from television, others hidden in shadow, their features blurred and distant. They sat at long tables in dark rooms, surrounded by maps, documents, and glowing screens filled with codes and red lines. The air was thick with tension and secrets. It became clear to me that many of these leaders had lost sight of the people they were meant to protect. Some were driven by fear, others by ambition, greed, or a desperate need to cling to power. They spoke in measured tones, discussing strategies, alliances, and threats. But behind their words, I sensed something more sinister, a spiritual darkness whispering lies into their hearts. I saw how decisions made in secret, behind closed doors, away from the eyes of the public, could change the fate of millions in an instant. The manipulation wasn't just political, it was spiritual. Evil influences exploited pride, anger, and division, pushing nations closer to disaster. In my vision, some leaders knew exactly what they were doing, trading truth for power and justifying terrible actions for what they called the greater good. Others were simply lost, overwhelmed by forces beyond their understanding, trapped in a web of deception spun by unseen hands. I watched as propaganda spread like wildfire, news reports twisting facts, social media filled with fear and outrage, families and friends turning against each other over ideologies they barely understood. The world was being pulled apart, not just by bombs and bullets, but by lies that set hearts against hearts. Yet even in those dark rooms, a few leaders hesitated. I saw moments where the light tried to break through, a memory of childhood innocence, a fleeting prayer, a longing to do what was right. I realized that no one is beyond redemption, and that the fate of the world can still be changed by a single act of courage, a single voice speaking the truth. Jesus' voice echoed through the vision. Pray for your leaders. Pray that their hearts would be softened, that truth would overcome deception, and that love would guide their decisions. For as long as there are those who pray, there is hope. The urgent call for spiritual awakening. As the visions of manipulation and darkness faded, I felt Jesus' presence draw even closer, his light shining brighter than ever. He looked at me, not with judgment, but with the deep love of someone who truly wants the best for every soul. In that moment, I understood that his greatest longing was not just to warn us about disaster, but to awaken us to a higher truth. Jesus spoke softly, yet every word struck my heart like a bell. "Layla, now is the time for my children to awaken. The world is caught in a battle between light and darkness, and every soul matters. This is the moment to remember who you are and why you are here. I saw people from every culture and religion, young and old, rich and poor, believers and doubters, each standing at a crossroads. Some were lost in distractions and fears, others desperate for something real to hold on to. Yet, in the midst of this uncertainty, I witnessed sparks of faith lighting up across the globe. A mother in India kneeling in prayer, a teenager in America sharing words of kindness, a businessman in Germany turning away from corruption, a child in Africa singing hope through tears. Each act of faith, no matter how small, pushed back the darkness. I realized that the greatest weapon against the coming storm was not hatred or violence, but spiritual awakening, hearts turning to God, families forgiving each other, strangers reaching out in love. Jesus showed me how even one sincere prayer could change the course of history. He said, "Tell them that I am calling each of them by name. The time for sleeping is over. Those who seek me with honest hearts will find me, even in the darkest hour." The future is not set in stone. Faith, love, and courage can change everything. It was clear to me then, the world's only hope lies in a collective return to truth, humility, and compassion. This awakening starts within each heart, and it must start now. The return to her body and the painful mission to share it all. As the visions faded, I felt an overwhelming longing to stay in that place of peace and light, close to Jesus, far from the suffering and confusion of the world. But Jesus looked at me with compassion and a gentle firmness in his voice. "Layla, your time here is not yet finished. You must return. You have seen what is coming, and now you must speak. Many will not believe you. Some will ridicule you. But do not let fear silence the truth. Tell them what you have seen." The light began to recede, and I felt myself falling, faster and faster, drawn back to the broken world I had left behind. There was a moment of pain, like being squeezed through a narrow tunnel, and then suddenly I was back in my body, surrounded by dust, sirens, and chaos. Every nerve screamed in agony. I tasted blood and concrete. My lungs fought for air. I heard voices, familiar and strange, calling my name, urging me to hold on. Paramedics worked frantically to revive me, and for a moment, I wished they would stop. It felt unbearable to leave the peace of that other world for the cold, harsh reality of this one. But as I opened my eyes and saw the faces of my family and friends, something inside me shifted. I remembered my mission, the reason I had come back. Even as the pain and confusion threatened to overwhelm me, a deep sense of purpose began to grow in my heart. The days and weeks that followed were filled with struggle. My body slowly healed, but my spirit felt heavy with the weight of what I had seen. I tried to explain my experience to doctors, to friends, to anyone who would listen. Some believed me. Others thought I was delusional or simply traumatized by the accident, but I could not keep silent. Every night, I saw the visions again. Cities in flames, families in tears, Jesus' eyes filled with hope and sorrow. I knew I had to share my story, no matter the cost. The world needed to hear this warning. The world needed to awaken. And so, with trembling hands and a heart full of both fear and hope, I began to tell the truth, one person at a time. If you are still watching, I want you to know, this is not just my story. It's a warning, yes, but it's also a message of hope that belongs to every single one of us. The visions I received were terrifying, but through every image of destruction and every moment of sorrow, there remained a constant light, the presence and love of Jesus. In the darkest visions, even when the world seemed lost, there were always people who refused to let go of hope. I saw parents risking everything to save their children, strangers offering comfort to each other, communities gathering to pray when there was nothing else left. These acts of faith and love became beacons in the night, small but unbreakable. Jesus showed me that no matter how powerful the darkness may seem, it can never overcome the light of even a single believing heart. Every time someone chooses forgiveness over revenge, truth over lies, love over hatred, they help to turn back the tide of destruction. The future is not decided by governments or weapons, but by the quiet choices made in the hearts of ordinary people. People like you and me. As I look back now, I know why I was sent back. It wasn't just to warn about war or judgment, but to remind the world that faith is stronger than fear, and that the story isn't over. Every act of courage, every prayer, every gesture of kindness helps to shape what comes next. If this message has touched your heart, please don't keep it to yourself. Share it. Leave a comment. Let others know that there is hope, even in the darkest hour. We are not alone, and together, with God's help, we can change the world, one soul at a time. The harvest is coming. Time is running out. Choose the light, and never let go.